Boom, hey internet. Just literally got back in town to Los Angeles from Portland, Oregon. Beautiful city, beautiful state. Wish I could spend more time there, but I was hanging out with Brennan, Agranoff, and the family. Big shout out to the entire family. This is a family affair, but if you've never heard of B, Brennan is a super successful entrepreneur. He's a whiz kid, literally. At the time that I'm shooting this, he has just turned 21. He'll talk about in the interview, but started his business when he was 13 years old and was highly successful by the time he was like a junior in high school. And so as of late, in 2020, he did over 2.1 million in revenue. So he has two companies, HoopSwagg, which is the first company he created, and the other company is Pet Party, which has done extremely well and is a big bulk of that 2.1. So me and him are friends. We have been like friends in real life. We talk about business, we talk about finances and all kinds of different things. He's sort of in my wheelhouse of, I would say, influencer business people that I have real conversations with. So it was a great pleasure actually to meet his mom and dad and his younger brother and the whole family. So here we go kind of in depth to his company in making some merch for me. So I used my JP logo. As you might see me kind of putting out more things that are kind of John Phenom branded, and I do have something to drop for that. But for now, enjoy an interview with Brennan Agranoff, entrepreneur and founder of a multi-million-dollar sublimation sock empire. So we're actually shooting this in Portland, Oregon, and I'm actually right next to Brennan, okay? So I've actually gotten a couple days to actually take a look at the business, hang out with Brennan and his family that are all involved in different capacities with the business. So I have a slew of questions that I definitely want to ask. Thanks for doing this, by the way.
Yeah,
and
of course.
Yeah, amazing host. If you guys haven't been, you should definitely visit Portland, Oregon. The first thing I have to ask you is you hit a lot of success extremely early in age, right? So like on this channel, I'll get anything from a high school kid that wants to start a clothing line to like, you know, someone in their early 40s, late 30s saying this has been my dream. I don't want to get around to it now. So what is it like literally building an empire in high school? Like, what is it like? Because you started the business at 13?
Yeah, so I mean, I did start the company when I was 13. There was like some precursor stuff, like I had sold some stuff on eBay and kind of like got the idea for, okay, here's how you actually could like start a business, if you will. And what's funny about the whole thing is it didn't necessarily start as like a business. It was more so like I was in love with the product and I was trying to get more of it for myself. Like I was in love with these socks and I wanted more of it for myself. And that's what actually ended up spinning into the business, which is funny because a lot of times people set out to start a business. I was doing something because I literally was in love with what I was making. But yeah, I mean, started when I was 13 and like the first few years were very, very slow in growth, I would say. And like you started like doing $10,000 a year and then you would get to like $30,000 a year. And so that kind of slowly grew. By the time I got to high school, we were like actually doing pretty significant revenue, like a couple $100,000 a year. Trying to like balance that with school was definitely like very difficult, but at the same time, it was super helpful because like I would actually be sitting in school and be able to contextualize something I'm learning there and applying it to a real life thing, which like almost gave me more context and understanding as to why I'm learning what I am in high school. But yeah, I mean, there was a ton to it in terms of like I was playing sports and trying to be somewhat of a normal kid at the same time. So there's like time management things. How do you actually still get anything done and keep the company moving? Because like running a company, there's a million things you have to look at once, especially when you don't have like a bunch of employees, like a marketing guy and a product guy. Like I was all of that. And so there was a lot of like, all right, how do I sort of pick off the lowest, easiest hanging pieces of fruit here and take care of those while still in high school before I can kind of like go all in on this.
Okay, so and so much in there. I mean, like entrepreneurs try to get maybe like, I would say a fraction of some of the success that you were having by the time. I mean, guys, imagine this, like being like a junior in high school and having the type of success that was building towards a multi-million-dollar company. But I was talking with your family and it came to the point where you had to like graduate early your senior year, and that whole law, that is a national law that people don't even know about, and you're in the one of few cases. But talk about that real quick because it's interesting.
So my senior year of high school, well, I came into high school knowing that like I had a bunch of extra credits. I was like ahead in math, and so I was able to get pretty far ahead in school with some other classes. And so I really was like a year and a half ahead of everyone in terms of credits. So my junior year, we like sat down like with the principal and whoever you had to talk to be like, hey, how can I graduate early? Because there's no reason for me to like, your senior year is kind of a joke in terms of like actual classes you're sitting in, like TA classes and just like filler time essentially. And I was like, I have stuff to do, like there's no reason for that. And so they're like, okay, how can I graduate early? And so there's this thing called the kiddie tax, and this was a large portion of it was if you are under, or if you're 18 or younger and still a full-time student, you get taxed at your parents' highest tax rate. And it basically is like in place to prevent parents from like funneling money through their kids tax-free.
Right, so just for context, what a strategy that people did before this law is they would basically open up a bank account and put like whatever, $1 million under their kid so that they wouldn't get hit with taxes. They're trying to avoid it. So in any ways, continue.
No, so they would get taxed way less. And this is great for that purpose, but I was in a little bit of a unique situation where like, I'm concerned with how much I'm paying on taxes because it's probably an additional $30,000 to $50,000 if I were to get taxed at that. And my birthday's in December, so I like cleared the 18 mark, like literally 20 days before the new year. The one piece that was missing was school. And so I technically would classify as a full-time student. So like that was really the largest factor of like, okay, I need to get out of school. And so we had to do all sorts of stuff to be able to like actually get me to graduate early out of high school. But because of that, I ended up saving all this money on taxes, and it was just a ridiculous process to try to explain this to a bunch of school counselors who were like asking to see my taxes and stuff. It was ridiculous, but like it was good to get out of there basically 6 months early too, to start working on stuff full time.
So this, in addition to a bunch of really crazy stories while he's building this company in high school, it's crazy to put it into retrospect. Even at your school, they didn't understand until you started getting like media attention, actual like press covering you.
Yeah, no, I mean, my junior year of high school, it was in April, my junior year, I had been building this company, like, I mean, some of my friends knew about it, but it wasn't like a public thing. And then I actually, like, long story, but we got picked up by CNN and they wrote an article on us that literally showed up on like the front page. And so then everyone at the school realizes like, oh, like even an admin and everyone in the school knew about it the day it was up. And then it was like, I became the sock kid and like legit, because the title was like 17-year-old sells $1 million in socks, which technically, yeah, that happened, but I was doing all this anyways, and this was just like, almost in retrospect, looking back on what had happened, but no one cared until someone published it. But it was just funny how that all played out.
All right, I definitely wanted to ask this. So people confuse Brennan as the sock kid. They think of you as a sock kid, and I didn't realize until I was in here and understanding the way kind of maybe the world views you, because me working inside of several multi-million-dollar companies, I know how much work it takes to create product, to have that flow going, sales, marketing, all of the things I talk about, like pillars, the 4 pillars of having a brand. And so what I know about you now is you run this more like a tech company in terms of like writing program and real like digital, like solving problems quickly, like to the point where I'm very convinced like in the future you could easily run a SaaS company. And I think a lot of people on my channel will also maybe equate you to like production of apparel, but it's very interesting because you can literally write the program. So with that difference in mind, like what is the most challenging thing to deal with your company right now in the day-to-day?
Yeah, so our company is a little bit unique in the sense, like you mentioned, we are moving more towards doing software in the past 2 to 3 years, and like how can we use software and leverage that to basically enhance what we're already doing with the manufacturing stuff. And we started with socks in 2013, and we've kind of slowly expanded past that. But again, I'm still, the term sock kid's easy to just like kind of pin there, and that's what I'm known as. But like we started doing oven mitts, we do ties, mugs, shoelaces, blankets, towels, all sorts of stuff, and the same process for the socks applies. But in terms of like how we're actually moving into software stuff, we started doing like socks where they're more customized, people upload faces in that, and that's kind of what pushed me into that. But the really like challenging part I would say is like, all right, we have this complex manufacturing process and this complex sort of customization process, and how can we write pieces of software that bring those two together and build efficiencies? And one of those examples is like something as simple as like, how do we pull and pack shipments, right? That used to take 3 to 4 people to do, and we were able to automate that with a couple lines of code. And that's like an extreme example, but we literally cut like 20-30% of people out of the process by automating things and solving problems before they even happened. But I never would have known that was possible without like, I ended up kind of teaching myself to code and just at least understanding enough to know what's possible, and being able to connect the dots between manufacturing and software and all that stuff in between, and even having an understanding and grasp around like artwork and how to use Photoshop, because this all plays into like my guy that I help write software with, he doesn't know how to use Photoshop. So trying to explain to him how to actually generate images, you have to write the logic out in Photoshop terms. And how do you turn that into code? It's you pull these little pieces pieces from all these different sort of skills and backgrounds, and it's when you put them all together that it can become like super powerful.
Wow. Yeah, and I've seen it in action, especially the sessions with you and your brother where you're creating code is very intense. It's really cool to watch. Okay, so maybe a little bit of a left turn here, but what are your thoughts on DTG production?
DTG, so we do a process called sublimation, which is sort of similar. They get confused a lot, but DTG, like I've looked into it because it does technically fit within sort of the scope of stuff that we do, which is complete like customization, one-off, made-to-order type stuff. My problem with DTG, and it's not that I like completely dislike it, but I don't think the quality is good as you get with like screen printing or sort of other types of printing. We've like we'll order vinyl and put them on blanks, right? But you have to order 100 or 1,000 of those, whatever it is. My problem with DTG is that like people expect the quality of screen printing because an end consumer doesn't know the difference between printing methods, and that if they only order one, they're gonna get this versus that. And so then you start getting a lot of like complaints about quality and like, my other shirt is this, but why does this not feel like this? And you can't explain to an end consumer the logistics of the printing process and why you chose what method you did. So I think DTG is like really good for almost like more gag gifts, which is why it would sort of fit in with what we do in terms of like the pet stuff. But in terms of like actually creating like a super high quality product, I don't know that DTG is the exact thing for that. I think it's good for like prototyping and stuff. But the other thing, like our stuff that here is like, we're very specific about quality. And so it's hard for us to start offering DTG when I don't necessarily think that it aligns with the quality of the other stuff we're putting out. So it's it can go either way.
Right. Having said that, and we outlined the process, but we're really talking here for your company about sublimation and transfers. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So having said that, at the moment, or what do you think is kind of like the biggest challenge with sublimation at the moment?
Yeah, so one of the challenges we face like all the time, just as an ongoing issue with sublimation, is like it's so specific to like temperature and pressure and even things around like the heat and humidity in the room around it. So it's like we're facing all these issues, and as you start to do new products, sometimes we'll face issues where like, all right, now the like edges of these things are fading, and it's a very much so like troubleshooting thing, which is why it's one of those things I don't think I appreciated it at first, but we've been doing this for like 7 years now. We've picked up so many little things about sublimation, which really is not like that well documented online by anyone necessarily. There's a lot of people that do it, but it's not like everyone's talking about it and, oh, I had this issue, here's how you fix it. It's so much testing and like, oh, this is the cause of this, and testing all this stuff. It's the inconsistencies, but that's kind of like what comes along with sublimation, just the process in general, and it's a trade-off for like the benefits you get from being able to do one-offs.
Definitely. Okay, so wanted to ask you, you've built something huge, it's continuing to grow. I know about all the different pieces and niches of business that are kind of funneling in. What is your vision for your company for the future at the moment?
Yeah, so the vision for like what we're building now, and like, over the past couple of days we've been going over this a bunch, but like we're looking at like, okay, we are almost turning it into more of a platform to create cool products on top of, because like the way I see it is you've got some of these like print on demand companies that are pretty big, and they simply do the product creation, right? Like all they do is you send them the full artwork, they print it, and that's great. And then there's some that like do the customized stuff, and then they pass it off to one of those companies. And then there's some that do both, but not that many. And so for us, we're like, all right, how can we create really cool consumer facing products that like to a normal customer looks super simple on the front end? Something like as simple as like a Nike ID is a really good example of that, where they could add a name and a number and choose their 3 background colors. So for them, that's 5 selections, and they get a fully personalized item. And for us, that's like very complex to manage that all through the process, but being able to sort of leverage what we've built on our back end for all these different use cases. So anything from that to like, how can we more effectively like help schools fundraise money, to like, how can you build better relationships with a gifting process, to like, how can you boost retention within customers by sending them personalized notes and gifts? And there's so many different applications for it that like, right. I'm super excited to kind of, I'm at a point where I get to explore all of those now, where I've been building for a bit now, and now we actually get to like see things come to fruition.
Right, and then in the future when you're clicking on this from when it's post dated, I mean, it's probably already out there, but as we're shooting this in the last couple of days, I've actually seen the interface and what it looks like, and the type of things that they're doing in terms of almost like a one-click to offer for fundraising, which is out of control. I mean, you're talking about a lot of designs to choose from, a variety of really good designs at one click. So for the idea for fundraising is just limitless. It's like really out of control. I think that program is gonna be so successful. And if you're clicking this on the future, you should go click on one of the links below to see how that looks. And then of course, I have to ask you, for all my guys that are watching on this channel, what advice do you have for someone who's setting out to do a company, doing a fashion product or an accessory, something in that range?
I think the one big thing that I see all the time, and I'm sure I don't get help nearly as often as you do for this stuff, but people ask me still like, hey, like I'm looking to do this. And this is the one thing I even have to do is I think it's super easy to get carried away with like, oh, this is what I want and I think this is what's gonna work. Like the reality is you have no idea what's gonna work, and you can test some stuff, sure, but like you have to be very analytical about, hey, this worked, this didn't, even though I might personally think the one that didn't end up being successful would have been. In order to make something that actually works and makes you money and whatnot and is successful, I think it's super important to be self-aware enough to like, hey, okay, maybe I wasn't 100% right, but let's iterate on what did work and keep heading in that direction, versus I've seen a lot of people who have been like, oh no, I want to keep heading in like my personal direction, which is fine, but just be aware that that's a very, you're making a fashion brand for yourself and not for people who actually want to purchase it. I think just listening to what people actually want is harder, but I think at the end of the day is what helps people be successful.
Great, definitely words to work by. Thanks for the time that you gave me, not only for this interview. Guys, I've been in Portland for a couple days and thoroughly enjoyed it. I love connecting with other entrepreneurs that are literally murdering the game. I'll have the links below, but where can people reach you or see HoopSwagg or Pet Party?
Yeah, so my main websites are HoopSwagg, that's HoopSwagg with 2Gs.com, and then petparty.co. And then the one other thing I'll throw out there, I mean, I'm on Instagram, Brennan.Agranoff, but if anyone has questions or anything, my email is BrennanAgranoff74@gmail.com, and I reply to pretty much everyone. So if there's ever anything I can help with, let me know.
Alright guys, thanks for watching. I want to send a big shout out to the whole Agranoff family. I got a special place in my heart for them and Portland as well.